So I did my presentation on the bombing of Pearl Harbor. What happened at Pearl Harbor? At 7:55 a.m. on the morning of December 7th, 1941, the American naval base at Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Imperial Japanese Navy. Within 2 hours, 18 ships had been sunk or damaged, 188 aircraft were destroyed, and 2,403 servicing Americans were killed. The US military was completely unprepared for the attack, which significantly changed the course of World War II, especially in the Pacific theater. The Japanese aim was to destroy and damage as much of the US Pacific Fleet as possible, before it could respond to the Japanese operations taking place on the same day against British, Dutch, and US territories in Asia. This goal was partially achieved, and American morale plummeted. However, many of the ships at Pearl Harbor were eventually repaired and fought in later battles. Disastrously for the Japanese, all 3 of the Pacific Fleet's aircraft carriers were not at Pearl Harbor during the attack, so escaped any damage. This is a US battleship sinking during the Pearl Harbor attack. Why did Japan attack America at all? Tensions between Japan and America began much before even the preparation for this attack, which had been mounting for most of the decade. Japan and America actually first came into conflict during the Great Depression. Japan, being an island nation, isolated from the rest of the world for much of its history, embarked on a period of aggressive expansion in the 1930s to solve its economic and demographic issues. Japanese forces invaded much of China, and in July 1937 captured Nanjing, the capital of the Chinese Nationalist Party. They proceeded to carry out 6 weeks of mass killings and rapes, now known as the Nanjing Massacre. After this atrocity, the American and British governments began passing economic sanctions against Japan, including banning Japanese access to aircraft exports and oil and scrap metal. Being held back by the Western Allied forces, in December of 1940, Japan signed the Tripartite Pact with Germany and Italy, who were then at war with the Allies. While America had hoped banning oil and other key goods would lead Japan to halting its expansion, the sanctions and other penalties had instead angered the Japanese public and led Japan to decide to stand its ground. War with America had become an inevitability for Japan if they wanted to keep their status as a major world power, and because they were starting from such a disadvantage, they knew the element of surprise was crucial. This is a newspaper reporting on the American and British trade embargo with Japan. Why was Pearl Harbor targeted specifically? America first made Pearl Harbor the main base for their Pacific Fleet in May of 1940. At the time, Americans didn't expect the Japanese to attack first in Hawaii, which was a significant distance away from the Japanese mainland, so the base of Pearl Harbor was left largely unguarded, which made it a very easy target. This is a photograph of Pearl Harbor and Battleship Row taken on October 30th, 1941. How did the attack on Pearl Harbor affect the outcome of World War II? Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor would end up driving America into World War II, a conflict which ended with Japan's surrender after the devastating nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. Despite this, the Pearl Harbor attack did initially look like a success for Japan. Japanese forces went on to capture a string of current and former Western colonial possessions by early 1942, but in the end it wasn't enough. The Pearl Harbor attack ultimately failed in its objective to destroy the Pacific Fleet. Japanese bombers missed ammunition sites, oil tanks, and repair facilities. Not one American aircraft carrier was present during the attack. In June 1942, this failure came back to haunt the Japanese, when American forces emerged victorious after the Battle of Midway, decisively turning the tide of war in the Pacific in the Allies' favor. This is an image from the Battle of Midway. And this is my bibliography. The music is called Requiem for the Dead by Biosphere. Thank you very much for listening.